One thing that I used to struggle with a lot, and I know it's something that a lot of people currently still do struggle with, is socializing. It can be a very awkward experience meeting someone for the first time. You're not sure if you have any common interest. You're not sure necessarily what to talk about, not sure how comfortable you can be around them, depending on the setting and who they are, how professional you have to be. But yeah, it can be just a very intimidating thing, meeting and talking to someone new. But socializing and being able to talk to new people is a skill that is extremely useful, pretty much universally applicable. It can apply to literally any setting where there are people you don't know. If you're at like a social outing and with one friend and they have other friends there, it'll help you get to know them. If you're starting a new job, it'll help you get to know your employer, get to know your other employees too, your coworkers. It'll overall just like make any setting that you're in a bit more comfortable because you can talk to people around you. And the reason that I want to talk about this right now specifically is because the consulting org I'm a part of, we are currently doing our recruiting process. So I've been to quite a few events where I've talked to potential applicants, just getting to know them, telling them more about the organization. Additionally, I've also received the first few members of my team, so I've spent a lot of time just one-on-one getting to know them. And it can be kind of hard to know what to say. Obviously check the boxes. Okay, goals for this semester, things you think you're strong in, things that you think you're not as strong in. But beyond that, I really want to get to know them on a personal level, make them feel comfortable. I'm not by any means saying that I'm some professional like speaker. I'm really good at like navigating people, but I've just had to do this a lot recently. So I'm just here to give you a few tips, words of wisdom that have sort of helped me throughout this experience. The first piece of advice is to simply just be yourself. This is something that I've mentioned several times in several different contexts on this page, but when you're yourself, you never have to fake anything. If you have to fake being somebody else, it can be really difficult to just have a conversation because you're not actually having a conversation as yourself. You have to actively think about, staging answers, and it can just be really sloppy. It's really easy to tell if someone's not being themselves and they're not being genuine and they're trying to put on a show for other people, and that's just going to say a lot about who you are as a person. If you're not comfortable with being yourself, what does that say about who you are? People want to get to know you. They don't want to get to know the fake you. So it's always just better to be yourself. It makes having a conversation 10 times easier. The next piece of advice is to be an active listener. Now, what does this mean? Pretty much it just means that you are not listening to this other person and waiting to respond. You are actually engaging with your brain, like what is coming out of their mouth. You are processing everything. Like if I tell you, oh yeah, my favorite, season is the fall, your brain shouldn't think, okay, what's my favorite season? No, your brain should think, okay, why is your favorite season the fall? Like, what do you like about fall? That's just what your brain should be saying. And just actually like understanding who this person is and what they're telling you. And that kind of directly leads to my next piece of advice, asking questions. Ask these follow-up questions because that shows the other person that, hey, like this person's actually engaging in this conversation. They're just not responding mindlessly or focus on like what they have to say. By asking questions, you're showing that you're actually listening to what this person has to say and you're engaging with, who they are. By asking questions, you are going to actively show this person that you actually care what they have to say and that you're genuinely curious about what they're telling you. It'll lead you guys to have a deeper than surface level conversation. And that'll just do numbers for making the conversation not feel like small talk, not feel so awkward, because you are actually having, a thoughtful conversation, not just like, oh, hi, what's your name? Hi, what's your major? Or anything like that. You're actually like really having a quality conversation. And the point that I really want to hammer home here is that the less that it feels like small talk, the more the conversation is going to be easier to have. You're going to feel so much more comfortable. Both parties are going to feel so much more comfortable just talking to one another because you guys aren't going to feel like strangers. You found, a good conversation you guys can have. But it is inevitable the conversation likely will kind of flatline, come to a lull where you're not really sure what to ask next. Both of you are just kind of standing there, a little bit awkwardly. So in my experience, when I've, been dealing with kind of that awkward silence, I found like the best thing to transition into is to talk about food. This is because everybody has an experience with food. We need it to survive. Even if someone isn't really into food, like they can talk about like, okay, I'm a picky eater. Oh, what kind of foods do you like, or what kind of foods do you not like? And then you can kind of transition and talk about foods, talking about restaurants. And I think there's just a lot of different ways you can approach this, especially if you guys are from like, if you're talking to somebody who isn't, from wherever you are, like, oh, what's your favorite thing like to cook from your hometown or maybe your home country if they're out of country and they're international. I think food is something that there are endless possibilities to talk about, and I think people can still bring in their own experiences and show who they are. There are so many things to talk about that I feel like it's a conversation that as long as you're trying to dig deeper and ask those questions and actively listen, it's going to take a while for it to die out. But that is the key. The longer that it takes for this conversation to die out, the longer you're going to be talking to this person and the more comfortable both people are going to be socializing with each other. And that comfortability is what allows you to not feel so awkward or not feel like you're making small talk, and it just makes the social interaction infinitely easier. Now, the last piece of advice seems obvious, but it's something that I think it's drastically overlooked, and that is to remember the person's name. You guys can have this amazing conversation about whatever. I just mentioned food, but it could be about food, movies, whatever, wherever the conversation goes. But if you don't remember this person's name and you see them again, it is going to say so much if you remember the conversation but you don't remember something as simple as their name. And it's going to be even more awkward if they remember your name and you don't remember theirs. So just making sure to, even to write it down in your notes app, just making sure to jot down their name, maybe what they look like or what you guys talked about so you can jog your memory. Just remembering that person's name is going to save you from a super awkward interaction. And you'd be surprised how often this happens, especially at college. You're meeting so many people, it can be really difficult to remember people's names. So just taking that extra step to really lock in this person's name in your brain, it's going to mean so much to them. Because imagine, you had this conversation and you talk to this person, and they're like, oh, sorry, what's your name again? And then you just kind of feel like, oh, my name is, so-and-so. And it will just lead to a situation or interaction that's like super uncomfortable, super awkward, and just kind of kill any progress that you made with this other person in the conversation you had with them the first time. So if you made it to the end of the video, I appreciate it. I hope it was helpful. Socializing is not easy, so I hope that these tips, advice, whatever you want to call it, was a little bit helpful and that you'll use it in the future. If you made it to the end, I appreciate it. Stay positive and stay safe.